Everyone who saw him for the first time must have believed that Pastor Creflo Dollar was the peak of success. The man displayed so much wealth, you would think he had a number of gold mines hidden somewhere in his backyard. But Pastor Creflo Dollar wasn't blessed with secret mines. What he had was a shocking level of confidence that boiled away any form of self-doubt. It made the man believe that he was chosen for something bigger and better. But when some questionable reports started to come out, many followers of this seemingly untouchable man began to see the cracks in the persona he had tried to sell. And when his walls came crashing down, the huge following, the wealth, and the influence all came down with it like a pack of cards. And buried under it all was Pastor Creflo Dollar, facing devastating consequences. To quite a number of people, a figure like Pastor Creflo Dollar was what they needed to help them get to whatever new status they were aiming for in life. He preached the prosperity gospel with so much assurance and certainty that even people who didn't share the same religious beliefs as him listened to his polished sermons for guidance. For them, he was a man who must know what he was talking about. He was an all-around success. He had money, he had fame, he had connections to high places. What more would anyone need from a role model? The man had started from the bottom, worked his way into the circle of the top movers and shakers of society. For many, Pastor Creflo Dollar was a resounding example of the power of the American dream. He had started quietly in a school cafeteria where no hands had clapped to praise every word that fell from his lips. His journey was anything but dazzling. Creflo Dollar was born Creflo Augustus Dollar Jr. His parents welcomed him into the family in January 1962. Growing up in College Park, Georgia, Creflo was raised in a small home where discipline and deep faith guided daily life. His father was a police officer, while his mother served food in the cafeteria at Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School. The family wasn't scraping the floor for their daily meals, but they also weren't free of challenges. College Park, the area where they lived, was an African-American community, and despite the sense of unity that persevered among members, it had its own struggles. But Creflo was shielded by his parents, who ensured faith and discipline, which was the powerful foundation on which his life was built. This gave the young Creflo the privilege to dream, and as he grew, he dreamed of becoming a professional football player. And this young man didn't just dream, he worked and toiled hard to make this dream a reality. In fact, when he got into West Georgia College, he was ready to take the next big step, playing college football. However, the unthinkable happened that ended all of that aspiration. In the early 1980s, Creflo suffered a serious injury that pushed him off the path he had known all his life. The heartbreak was so bad that while he was recovering, Creflo realized he needed some help beyond what the doctors could give, and so he began attending Bible study meetings. And then one day, he said something changed inside him. He felt spiritually awakened, and that moment completely redirected his life. He was beginning to understand the Bible in a deeper way. With this deeper connection, Creflo began hosting small Bible study meetings of his own. And the most incredible thing happened. People came and kept coming. By 1981, more than 100 people were attending every week. Among them was a young woman named Taffy Bolton, who later became his wife and the partner who stood with him through every stage of his ministry journey. By 1984, he earned a degree in educational therapy from West Georgia College. He took a job at the Bronner Psychiatric Institute in Atlanta, where he helped people with learning difficulties. This was a job that required and demanded clear communication and patience. Creflo learned these skills and was wonderful at his job. However, he began to feel like there was something more he could be doing, and try as he might, he just couldn't let go of it. Then, in 1986, just 2 years after earning his degree, Dollar made a decision that changed everything. He started World Changers Ministries Christian Center inside the cafeteria of Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School. It was the same cafeteria where his mother once served food, and the same school where he had been part of the first group of black students after integration. For Creflo, it was great enough. This was good. What he really wanted was to teach the Bible in a way that felt practical and easy to understand. Despite his very noble goal, less than 10 people attended that first service. Still, this didn't dampen his spirit in any way. He delivered his message simply and boldly. He wanted to connect with his listeners, and gradually, he did. His small members began to grow, and more people began to fill up seats. During that period, Creflo refined his teaching to become what is known as the prosperity gospel. He preached that faith, positive confession, and generous giving, especially tithing, could lead to financial success and a better life. This began to define his platform. To people desperate for a financial breakthrough, this was hope. And with every sermon, the crowds continued to grow. By 1991, Creflo's ministry had expanded so much that it was renamed World Changers Church International, reflecting how far he believed its influence would reach. His radio and television program, Changing Your World, carried his teachings into millions of homes. He was no longer just a pastor from Georgia. He had become a global televangelist. People from Africa, Canada, India, and the United Kingdom tuned in, believing his message could help unlock the financial miracle they had been praying for. Creflo began building the World Dome, a massive sanctuary in College Park with seating for 8,500 people. The project was ambitious and cost nearly $20 million, but he was determined to complete it without taking on debt. So, he ensured the entire project was funded by his congregation, and on December 24, 1995, the doors of the World Dome officially opened. The College Park headquarters became more than just a place of worship. It was also a daycare center. It had television studios, and it was from here that the outreach programs and publishing operations originated to spread Creflo's teachings to the world. By the middle of the 2000s, World Changers Church International had grown into one of the largest megachurches in the US, with more than 30,000 members. The expansion did not stop in Atlanta. In 2007, the church announced plans to create up to 500 fellowship churches worldwide. So, new satellite churches opened in New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Houston. The ministry also went beyond the shores of the country, establishing locations in Canada, Australia, and Africa. The Gold Coast Church opened in June 2014, marking the ministry's first expansion into the Asia-Pacific region. These satellite churches operated under local leadership but closely followed his teachings. Soon enough, World Changers Church International reported annual revenues of about $70 million, with an operating budget of around $80 million. This financial strength allowed the ministry to expand its reach even further. He even had a daily television program, Changing Your World, which helped spread his prosperity teachings across the globe. The show aired in more than 150 countries, reaching nearly 1 million households. Each episode focused on themes of financial success, health, and personal empowerment, showing how belief could lead to real-life breakthroughs. Television was only one part of his success. He had also become a best-selling author. His books, including 8 Steps to Create the Life You Want and Winning in Troubled Times, combined scripture with motivational strategies. They offered readers clear guidance on how to achieve success. His ability to make spiritual lessons feel practical really helped him become one of the most influential televangelists in the world. Alongside his writing, his ministry sold DVDs, online courses, and other resources, creating multiple streams of income that fueled his growing empire. And as he grew larger, so did his critics. Not everyone agreed with his message. Critics argued that Changing Your World turned faith into a financial exchange, where people were encouraged to give money with the promise of receiving blessings in return. And these were the signs that Creflo had turned belief in God into a business. A lot of critics also pointed to his lavish lifestyle as evidence that his teachings benefited him more than his followers. They cited reports that some churchgoers even traveled long distances to attend his services, drawn by his promise of both financial and spiritual transformation. In fact, to prove their point, there were studies conducted. One of those studies reported that many followers of prosperity gospel churches did not experience the financial breakthroughs they were promised. Instead, many continued to struggle while their pastors accumulated great wealth. For many, the whole concept was only benefiting the leaders of such churches. Despite the criticism, Creflo's ministry continued to expand. To keep all these churches connected, he used advanced broadcasting technology. He even spoke about using holograms for future sermons. This again raised more questions among critics, who asked whether his high-tech approach created genuine spiritual connections or turned ministry into a business model. Creflo refused to give in to whatever arguments the critics brought up. He insisted that financial success allowed Christians to do more good in the world. He used carefully chosen Bible verses to defend his beliefs, saying his wealth was proof that his message worked. His supporters agreed, believing his ministry had helped many people improve their lives. His opponents disagreed, believing that true spiritual growth was about faith and character, not money and luxury. There were those who felt it wasn't a bad thing to be financially successful, even as one pursues true spiritual growth. But they also pointed out that when the financial part became excessive, then there was a need for a re-evaluation. And they noted Creflo's most extravagant property, a mansion in Fayetteville, Georgia, worth several $1 million. The estate itself was said to sit on many acres of land, and a long driveway separates the house from public view, ensuring both comfort and privacy. It was first built in the 1990s and later went through major renovations, with extra wings added to give it its current size. In addition to this estate, Creflo once owned a high-rise apartment in New York City at the Time Warner Center. The two-bedroom condo was located on a very high floor and offered beautiful views of the city. Although it was smaller compared to his other properties, its location made it a clear symbol of wealth and exclusivity. He later sold the apartment for a higher price than he paid for it, making a large profit. He also owns a luxury home in Bergen County, New Jersey, adding to his impressive real estate collection beyond just mansions. His taste for extravagance also extends to his vehicles. He owns several Rolls-Royce cars, some of which cost several $1 million. His transportation choices go beyond luxury cars. He also owns a private jet, which he believes is necessary to help him spread his ministry efficiently. Before acquiring his current jet, he owned another private aircraft that was involved in an accident in London. He has often stated that these expensive purchases are tools used to fulfill his spiritual mission. He frequently quotes Proverbs 13:22, which speaks about wealth being stored up. The idea is that believers can claim wealth through faith and financial giving. He calls this planting, a practice where donations act as a spiritual investment that brings financial return. Creflo has gone further than that. He has preached that Jesus' sacrifice not only covered sin, but also removed financial struggle. In his view, poverty is not just an economic problem. It is a failure to claim God's promises. He taught that prayer is not only for spiritual growth, but also a way to bring wealth. These opinions only continue to make him more controversial, and it wasn't long before he faced government scrutiny. In 2007, the U.S. Senate Finance Committee, led by Senator Charles Grassley, launched an investigation into 6 televangelists, including Creflo. The inquiry focused on whether these ministries were misusing tax-exempt donations for personal luxury. Investigators requested financial records from World Changers Church International, looking into salaries, private jets, and luxury homes. Creflo, however, refused to provide the documents. His legal team argued that the committee had no authority to demand them without a subpoena. This made him one of the least cooperative figures in the investigation. By 2011, the Senate Finance Committee dropped the case without taking further action. Some believed pressure from influential church groups had played a role in shutting it down. Although the investigation ended, it raised serious concerns about transparency in religious organizations. Investigations had also revealed that Creflo and his wife owned multiple luxury properties near their church headquarters in Georgia. Offshore entities tied to him in the Bahamas raised even more questions about his financial dealings. Concerns over financial transparency continued. Ministry Watch, a Christian watchdog group, repeatedly gave World Changers Church International an F rating. The failing grade came from the church's refusal to disclose key financial records, such as audited statements and IRS filings. These documents are considered essential for approving how donations are used. The lack of transparency raised suspicions that church funds were being used for personal luxury rather than ministry work. Watchdog groups pushed for stricter regulations on tax-exempt religious organizations, saying leaders like Creflo had to be held accountable. Then another issue came up in June of 2012. Police arrested Creflo at his home in Fayetteville, Georgia. His 15-year-old daughter accused him of choking her, punching her, and hitting her with a shoe after she refused to follow his decision to keep her from attending a party. She told officers that he wrestled her to the ground, leaving a scratch on her neck. Creflo denied the allegations, saying the scratch was caused by eczema, not a physical fight. A few days later, he addressed his congregation, calling the accusations exaggerated. He admitted that emotions had run high, but insisted he never choked or punched his daughter, to which his congregation responded with standing ovations. Eventually, the case never went to trial because prosecutors dropped the charges after Creflo completed an anger management program. Despite the legal matter fading, the incident sparked a wider discussion about domestic abuse in religious communities. Some critics argued that churches often discourage victims from coming forward, especially when the leaders involved are powerful. Others pointed out that certain interpretations of scripture, such as "spare the rod, spoil the child," can be used to justify harsh discipline. Although the legal trouble ended, questions about Creflo's leadership and the way he handled the situation remained, but the controversies only became bigger. In 2015, Creflo made a request that sent shockwaves around the world. Many of his critics couldn't believe their own ears. Creflo asked his followers to help him buy a very expensive Gulfstream private jet. The plan, called Project G650, asked hundreds of thousands of people to donate a few $100s each. He said the jet was necessary for his ministry and for traveling around the world. At the time, his current aircraft was an older Gulfstream model. Creflo explained that it had been in use for many years and had flown millions of miles. It had experienced serious problems, including an engine failure while flying over the Pacific Ocean. On another trip to Australia, the plane suffered a nose gear collapse during a cancelled takeoff in London. His ministry simply stated that the aircraft was no longer safe to use. They also claimed that the new jet would help them transport food and supplies for humanitarian work. However, aviation experts disagreed with this claim. They argued that the jet the ministry wanted to buy had a very limited baggage capacity and was way more expensive than bigger jets that would handle humanitarian needs easily. This led to more questions about the true purpose of the aircraft and only attracted more criticism. Others wondered why Creflo couldn't just fly commercial airlines like many other pastors. With the criticism so high, religious watchdog groups condemned the campaign, saying it showed how tax-exempt ministries could pressure followers for money. The fundraising page for the jet disappeared within days, but reports came out suggesting that Creflo was still exploring other ways to obtain the jet through private donations. During one sermon, He even responded to his critics, saying that if he wanted to believe God for a luxury plane, no one could stop him. His congregation cheered, but that response to critics didn't win him any supporters outside the church. The scandal renewed debates about financial transparency in churches. Creflo himself had already been examined during a U.S. Senate investigation into televangelist finances several years earlier. Although no legal action was taken, questions about accountability remained. While supporters believed there was nothing wrong with helping their pastor, many others, including Christians, disagreed. In fact, gospel musician Kirk Franklin spoke out against preachers who linked luxury to faith, describing it as a lack of character. Then, the devastating news for many staunch supporters of Creflo was delivered on June 20th, 2022, by none other than Creflo himself. He shocked his members at World Changers Church International in Georgia with the sermon he titled The Great Misunderstanding. During the sermon, Creflo admitted that his teachings on tithing were wrong. He explained that tithing was part of Old Testament law and did not apply to Christians living under grace. Instead, he introduced a new idea called grace-based giving. He encouraged believers to decide for themselves how much to give without pressure from the church. He quoted Romans 6:14 to support his point, saying, "Sin shall not have dominion over you, for ye are not under the law, but under grace." Creflo admitted Christians were never meant to give out of fear or obligation. He told his followers to throw away all his books and sermons that had promoted tithing. This was beyond shocking. Creflo had demanded tithing for decades. Many expected an apology, but even though he admitted he had been wrong, Creflo refused to apologize. Instead, he told his congregation that his past mistakes were part of his journey to understanding grace. In his own words, he stated, "I will not apologize, because if it was not for me going down that route, I would have never ended up where I am right now." Critics, however, felt an apology was necessary. They pointed out that for decades, his followers had given money believing it was required by God, and he, Creflo, had collected this money from them, becoming a multimillionaire in the process. Some critics even said that if he truly believed his past teachings were wrong, he should offer refunds for the books and materials he had sold. Others argued that to prove his sincerity, he should give up the lifestyle that came from those teachings. Pastor Michael Clayton Harris of Atlanta said Creflo needed a Zacchaeus spirit, referring to the biblical tax collector who repaid those he had wronged. Harris believed that simply changing his message was not enough. Creflo needed to take responsibility for the financial impact his past teachings had on people's lives. A number of watchdog groups joined their voice with Pastor Harris and pointed out that though Creflo may have changed his views on tithing, his ministry still lacked financial transparency. His extravagant lifestyle had not changed, and he had made no mention of financial accountability. However, while many criticized, there were other people who praised Creflo for admitting he was wrong, seeing his change of heart as spiritual growth. Creflo and his family have had a number of controversies, but even now, they are still focused on their ministry, and Creflo remains one of the most criticized figures in modern televangelism.